It unleashes a pulse so deep and violent that the drones quake apart, imploding under the force. Steel folds like paper, lights extinguish in an instant, and fragments sink useless into the dark. For a moment, the abyss pushes back the surface. For a moment, silence tries to return. But above, more shadows loom. The outlines of vessels shift across the fracture's opening, and from them, even heavier shapes lower into the abyss. These are not probes. They are machines of industry, built not for observation, but for conquest. Claws, drills, lights, arms designed to dig, to cut, to take. Humanity has not only found the cathedral, it has decided to open it. The Guardians react with fury. Their resonance sharpens into a weapon, vibrations crashing against steel hulls. Currents whip into turbulence as they strike, battering the machines before they can anchor. Hunters, too, swarm toward the intruders, not out of allegiance but instinct. To them, the fracture is prey, and anything spilling through it is another meal. The machines become caught between guardian and predator, shredded by teeth, cracked by resonance, torn apart before they can even begin. And still more descend. The abyss is being invaded from both sides, predators from below, humans from above. The Guardians are stretched thin, their formations breaking under pressure. For every hunter scattered, 2 more dive into the cathedral. For every machine destroyed, more shadows press down from the wound. The Leviathan bellows another pulse, a roar so vast it silences everything for a heartbeat. Hunters recoil, Guardians steady, even the machines tremble in its path. It rises to the surface of the pool, its colossal body filling the chamber with radiance. For an instant, it holds all forces at bay, the embodiment of defiance itself. And yet, even in its might, cracks show. Its pulses falter, growing ragged. Scars split across its armor plates, glowing fissures leaking faint light. The Leviathan is not infinite. Even Guardians can break. Above, the fracture groans again. More ice splits free, crashing downward in avalanches that hammer the chamber with unstoppable force. The cathedral is breaking apart, ceiling, walls, and floor collapsing in unison. What once stood eternal is dissolving into ruin. The abyss can no longer defend its silence. It must decide how it will survive its shattering. The abyss groans as though the ocean itself is being torn apart. The fracture widens without pause, sending torrents of shattered ice cascading into the cathedral. Each impact rattles the monoliths, shakes the vessel, and scatters guardians and hunters alike. What was once sacred is now collapsing, stone and water screaming in unison. The swarm presses harder. No longer content to circle, the hunters surge into the heart of the chamber. Their sleek bodies cut through broken currents, their teeth flashing silver in the fractured light. They tear at guardians, at drones, at anything caught in the chaos. Their hunger has no allegiance. To them, this unraveling world is feast. The guardians fight to the last. Their flanks blaze brighter than ever, arcs of light weaving nets that entrap the swarm. Resonance collides with resonance, pulses layered into walls of sound that rattle bone and steel. They slam into hunters with desperate force, throwing themselves into battles they cannot win. One by one, they fall, each flash extinguished, each hum silenced. The chamber dims with every loss, but still they fight. The Leviathan endures at the center of it all. Its great body glows with fractured brilliance, plates cracked and scarred from the endless struggle. It rises again and again, scattering hunters with sweeps of its colossal frame, blasting machines into ruin with pulses so violent they warp the water itself. Yet even in its fury, it slows. Each movement carries weight. Each roar carries strain. Its light flickers at the edges, its power bleeding away into the collapse. Above, the machines descend further. Larger constructs now breach the wound, arms of steel unfolding, claws digging into the ice to anchor themselves. Lights beam downward in endless search, capturing the battlefield as though it were already a prize claimed. They do not care for hunters or guardians. They only reach deeper, extending their tools into the abyss with unrelenting purpose. The hunters swarm the machines, tearing through cables, ripping at steel. Sparks burst like fireflies swallowed whole. But for every machine consumed, another follows. The fracture is no longer only a wound. It is a door being forced open, wider with every fall of ice, brighter with every descending shadow. The Leviathan's gaze fixes on it. For the first time, its pulses do not command, do not warn. They resonate with something heavier, resignation, perhaps, or choice. The sound vibrates through the vessel, through the monoliths, through every trembling wall of the cathedral. The guardians hear it. They break from the swarm. Their arcs were forming around the Leviathan, gathering in a spiral of light that burns even in the face of collapse. It is not a formation of defense. It is a formation of sacrifice. The Leviathan begins to rise. Slowly, with immeasurable weight, it surges toward the wound. The guardians follow, spiraling tighter around its body, their flanks blazing brighter than they ever have. Together, they climb the fractured column of water, a living tower of light rising against the storm. Hunters lunge at them, jaws snapping, but pulses slam outward, shattering the swarm into chaos. Machines extend arms to seize them, but resonance tears through steel, breaking their grasp. Nothing halts the ascent. The chamber quakes harder than before. The monoliths lean, carvings breaking apart. Sediment bursts upward in choking clouds. The vessel is thrown sideways, barely holding against the current. We cling to instruments, to steel, to breath, but even through terror, we understand. The Leviathan is not climbing to escape. It is climbing to close. Its pulses deepen as it ascends, growing slower, heavier, until the chamber itself vibrates in unison. The Guardian's light flickers into blinding brilliance, their spirals tightening, forming a halo around their sovereign. The wound above widens one last time, beams of surface light crashing down into the abyss. Hunters surge upward, chasing, teeth flashing. Machines lower further, reaching, clawing. And then the Leviathan roars. The pulse that follows is unlike anything before. Not sound, not light, but force. It rips through the chamber, through the canyon, through every fracture and every shadow. Hunters scatter like dust. Machines implode in showers of sparks. The very walls of the abyss seem to bend under its fury. The Guardians blaze, their bodies igniting in final brilliance. Their light pours into the Leviathan, feeding its roar, until the abyss burns like a sun beneath the ice. And the fracture shudders. The roar does not end. It grows, layering upon itself, folding into waves that churn the abyss into a storm of resonance. The wound above thrashes under its weight, light and shadow collapsing into a violent spiral. Machines are torn apart mid-descent, their arms snapping, their lights bursting like stars extinguished one by one. Hunters reel in chaos, flung across the chamber like shards of glass in a hurricane. But the Leviathan does not falter. Its body burns with impossible light, veins of brilliance tearing across its scarred flanks. Every crack that once bled weakness now floods with fire. It has become the pulse itself, no longer a creature, but the voice of the abyss, the embodiment of a world refusing to be swallowed. The Guardians dissolve into its radiance. Their forms, once distinct, shimmer into threads of light that wrap the Leviathan in a living cocoon. One by one they surrender, until only the blaze remains, spiraling tighter, brighter, until it blinds the chamber. The vessel's cameras shatter under the brilliance. Our eyes water, burning with light that feels less seen than felt. And still, the roar grows. The wound begins to close. Ice trembles along its edges, pulled inward by force unseen. The fracture that had widened with each quake now contracts, collapsing in on itself as though gripped by invisible hands. Shards of ice rain downward, not as ruin but as rebirth, each piece sealing against another in perfect symmetry. The beams of surface light shrink, fragment, vanish. What was once a doorway becomes a scar. What was once an opening becomes a seal. Hunters shriek in panic, their sleek bodies whipping against currents they cannot resist. They scatter into cracks, vanishing into the darkness of other canyons. Machines tumble uselessly, crushed against walls, their husks falling like forgotten anchors. The chamber convulses with the violence of closure, but with every tremor, with every impact, the abyss strengthens. And at the center of it all, the Leviathan burns. Its body is no longer flesh, no longer bone. It is a beacon forged of sound and memory, of guardian sacrifice and millennia of patience. Its form wavers, dissolving into light that pulses with the rhythm of the abyss itself. For a moment, it seems eternal, the embodiment of everything hidden beneath frozen seas. Then the light fractures. The Leviathan's roar breaks into echoes, each one softer, each one farther away. Its brilliance splinters into streams, racing through cracks, seeping into stone, leaving behind glowing veins that thread the canyon walls like constellations carved into ice. The Guardian's light vanishes with it, fading into silence. The cocoon dissolves, the chamber darkens, and the Leviathan is gone. The abyss lies still. Still, they pressed on. For beyond that horizon, somewhere beyond the endless sweep of snow and sky, they believed an answer awaited them. A passage, a discovery, a revelation worth all the suffering. And so they bent their heads against the wind, tightened their furs, and carried forward into the breathless white, knowing the silence would never yield, but determined to walk deeper into its heart. By the time the explorers reached the heart of the frozen expanse, something profound had changed within them. The white silence was no longer merely a landscape to endure. It had seeped into their very bones, a presence that shaped thought and breath alike. Each step felt heavier, each inhale colder, yet their eyes had learned to pierce the monotony, to read meaning in the undulating snow, to detect the subtle shift of ice that might conceal a hidden danger. Here, in the unbroken whiteness, time had surrendered its dominion. Days were measured by the angle of the wind or the brief warmth of a weak sun, weeks by the dwindling of provisions and the fading of hope. Memory itself began to fracture. Some men could recall the color of a forest, the scent of a river, the warmth of a fire, but only dimly, as if these recollections belonged to someone else. And yet, it was this very dislocation from the known that sharpened their senses, that made them acutely aware of every sound, every tremor, every whisper carried on the icy gusts. The land seemed almost sentient here. Snow shifted with a deliberateness that suggested intent. Ice groaned as if speaking in an ancient language. Crevasses yawned beneath their feet like the mouths of some hidden leviathan, waiting to swallow them whole. And yet, there were moments of breathtaking beauty. The sun rising in a palette of golden violet, a frozen waterfall glittering like crystal, the aurora stretching across the horizon like a living veil. These glimpses were fleeting, yet they left an indelible mark on the soul, a reminder that the white silence was as magnificent as it was merciless. Loneliness became both companion and tormentor. Some explorers wrote endlessly in journals, chronicling every detail, hoping that the ink might preserve them against the erasure of time. Others wandered the ice, speaking aloud to voices only they could hear, conjuring memories of those who had been lost along the way. Madness was never far, and some succumbed quietly, slipping beneath the frozen veil, leaving only footprints that the wind would erase. It was here, amid the extremes, that the explorers began to understand the paradox of the white silence. It was a teacher, but a cruel one. It demanded endurance, patience, and reverence. It offered no guidance, no comfort, no assurance of survival. And in this harsh tutelage, the smallest acts became heroic, lighting a fire in the teeth of a gale, coaxing a team of exhausted dogs to continue, patching torn canvas in the endless cold. These acts were not grand, not sung in halls of kings, but they were the measure of courage that mattered here. Some nights, when the aurora cast its eerie glow across the ice, explorers swore they could feel the presence of those who had come before. Figures blurred at the edge of vision, shadows moving with deliberate purpose, whispers carried on the wind. Was it imagination? A trick of the light? Or was the land itself alive with memory, guarding the secrets of those lost to time? No one could answer, and perhaps the question itself was part of the lesson. The culmination of this first journey into the white silence was not marked by discovery, nor by conquest, nor even by survival alone. It was marked by transformation. The men who emerged from this frozen crucible were altered, shaped by a land that tested every fiber of their being. They had stared into the face of eternity, and the reflection staring back was no longer the same as the one they had left behind. As the first explorers began their tentative return, leaving footprints to be quickly swallowed by drifting snow, the white silence reclaimed its dominion. The storms returned with renewed vigor. The auroras danced with indifferent majesty, and the horizon stretched endlessly, waiting. It waited for the next soul brave enough or foolish enough to step into its grasp. And somewhere beneath the layers of ice, it remembered all those who had walked before, keeping their stories frozen, their triumphs and failures suspended in the eternal white. The white silence endures, unchanging and infinite. It is a monument to human ambition, a crucible of endurance, a mirror of the soul. And for those who dare to enter its expanse, it offers neither promise nor mercy, only the profound, ineffable truth of existence exposed beneath the vast, unbroken sky. Beneath the frozen expanse, ambition is both a flame and a tomb. The explorers who dared to chase the horizon often found their desires ensnared by ice, their dreams immobilized in the very land they sought to conquer. Wooden ships, once brimming with life and purpose, groaned and splintered under the weight of relentless frost. Campsites, carefully constructed with hope and sweat, vanished beneath storms that could swallow men and their labors whole in the night. Every expedition carried within it the promise of glory and the certainty of peril. Men wrote in journals, their ink bleeding into pages stiff with frost, chronicling journeys that would end before the ink could dry. They mapped rivers that froze into oblivion, climbed peaks where the wind tore breath from their lungs, and descended valleys that seemed to vanish beneath layers of snow. Yet even as they recorded their feats, they sensed the land's patient dominion. It was indifferent to their ambition, yet it demanded acknowledgement. Every decision, every choice, could mean life or death. And some choices, the smallest of errors, had consequences that echoed into eternity. The ice claimed many slowly, silently. Frostbite would creep along fingers and toes before a man realized the damage, his flesh blackening in a quiet, unheeded rebellion. Starvation gnawed at the belly with a precision that mocked the body's efforts to sustain itself. And always, the wind whispered warnings through tents and over frozen ridges, a soundless admonition carried across the endless white. Those who listened, who respected the subtle language of the ice, sometimes survived. Those who ignored it became nothing more than whispers themselves, their ambitions frozen mid-stride. In the journals of those who perished, there's a recurring motif, the allure of the impossible. Maps were unfinished, coordinates left dangling, destinations never reached. Yet men could not stop, compelled by a force stronger than fear or reason. Perhaps it was pride. Perhaps it was the human instinct to know. Or perhaps it was the belief that their names could endure if they stepped beyond the boundaries of the known, leaving the ordinary world behind to etch themselves into history. Ambition, after all, has always demanded sacrifice. And in the polar regions, the cost was absolute. Ships trapped in ice became monuments to human audacity. Their timbers groaned under the pressure of glaciers that moved silently but inexorably. Some vessels cracked open in frozen fury, sending men and provisions into a frozen abyss from which neither would return. Entire crews vanished, leaving only notes hastily scribbled, messages for the future that would never be read. The ambitions that had carried them to these ends now lay entombed, a testament to the peril inherent in chasing the horizon. Campsites that seemed secure one evening were obliterated by the next storm. Tents ripped to shreds, sledges overturned, supplies scattered across the whiteness. Survival became a matter of constant vigilance, of anticipating nature's next move, of reading subtle shifts in wind and snow. Men learned to respect ice as a living adversary, not merely a backdrop for heroism. Even the simplest tasks, melting water, preparing food, tending the dogs, became battles against the land itself. Tests of ingenuity and endurance that would decide whether one lived to see the next sunrise. And yet, for all the danger, for all the suffering, they persisted. The lure of discovery was irresistible. Buried beneath the snow were not just obstacles, but treasures. Passages unseen by civilization, geological formations untouched by human hands, artifacts from previous explorers frozen in time. Every success, however small, was celebrated with a fervor born of desperation. A surviving day, a found supply, a safe crossing, each became a victory against the merciless expanse. Even as ambition was punished by the ice, it also persisted, stubborn and relentless. It was this paradox that defined the explorers' existence. The very same land that would swallow them also beckoned them forward, promising the impossible, offering glimpses of glory that might never come. And in the frozen heart of the world, ambition endured, entombed in ice yet alive, whispering to the next generation of men, daring enough to answer its call. Some ambitions were doomed from the outset, bound to the fate of fragile vessels and human endurance. Men sailed into the unknown with maps that were little more than sketches, their lines drawn with hope and speculation. They trusted compasses that wavered under the magnetic stranglehold of the poles, and they relied on provisions that would often fail before the journey did. Yet the call of discovery was irresistible. The promise of stepping where no human had stepped, of uncovering relics hidden for centuries beneath ice and snow, pushed them beyond caution, beyond reason. The cold tested not only the body, but the mind. Isolation became a relentless adversary, gnawing at sanity as effectively as hunger gnawed at flesh. Men began to see shadows where none existed, to hear the whispers of companions long dead. Dreams became indistinguishable from reality, and the line between memory and hallucination blurred into something terrifyingly tangible. A tent flaps violently in the wind and they imagine voices. A snowdrift shifts and is a lurking predator. In the silence, their own thoughts became the cruelest tormentors, echoing endlessly across the white expanse. Despite these terrors, there were moments of triumph. A discovered passage through a glacier, a newly sighted peak, a mapped coastline that had existed only in conjecture. These were victories that felt immortal. They were etched into journals, not merely as records, but as proof that human will could pierce the frozen world. Yet even triumph carried its own danger. Each success was a siren call, urging the explorers onward into ever more treacherous terrain, deeper into the grip of ice that waited patiently to claim its due. Some men did not survive these temptations. They fell into crevasses, starved in hidden snowbanks, or were overtaken by storms that obliterated entire camps. Their names were written in hurried letters, etched into wooden planks, or whispered in desperate prayers, but the land claimed them entirely, leaving little more than frozen traces. Ambition had carried them to the edge, but the edge had no mercy. In death, they became part of the landscape, their aspirations frozen mid-flight, monuments to the audacity that drove them. Artifacts frozen in time told the same story. Rusted tools, half-burned fires, journals with ink cracked by frost. These silent witnesses speak across the centuries. They remind us that every expedition was a gamble, that every dream carried a cost measured in frostbitten toes, in frozen tears, in lives extinguished before their purpose could be fulfilled. Yet they also speak of resilience, of courage, of the unyielding drive that compelled men to confront the polar void again and again, even knowing the stakes. Ambition in the polar regions was never solitary. It existed in networks of men, in crews bound by duty and desperation. Decisions made by one affected all. A failed ration, a misread map, a moment of hubris could doom an entire team. Bonds were tested in extremity, loyalty forged in the crucible of frost and wind. And in some cases, these bonds became lifelines, a hand offered in exhaustion, a shared morsel of food, a whispered encouragement in the depths of night. Even amid death and despair, human connection remained a fragile but vital thread. Yet the paradox endured. Ambition drove men forward, yet it exposed them to destruction. The very ice that preserved the relics of failed journeys also tempted new explorers to follow in their footsteps. The stories of those lost became legends, and legends became lures. The more men were lost, the stronger the allure seemed to grow. Ambition, in this sense, was a living force, entombed in ice, yet whispering insistently to all who would dare answer its call. And so the cycle continued. Ships set sail, sledges were loaded, journals were prepared, and men disappeared into the frozen abyss, answering a call they could neither resist nor fully comprehend. The polar frontier swallowed them with patient inevitability, yet their ambitions, their striving, their relentless human drive, remained etched in the white silence, waiting to be discovered, waiting to inspire the next generation to chase the impossible. As the ice stretched endlessly ahead, ambition transformed into obsession. Each expedition that pressed further north or south was driven not simply by curiosity, but by the compulsion to conquer what others had failed to claim. Entire crews became devoted to a singular purpose: to etch their names into the frozen maps of the world. They measured days by distance traveled, by the sight of distant peaks, by the crossing of treacherous glaciers. Every mile gained was a testament to courage. Every mile lost, a brutal reminder of nature's supremacy. The ice, however, cared little for the dreams of men. It was a patient adversary, subtle yet merciless. Crevasses that appeared deceptively narrow could swallow a man whole. Snowfields that seemed solid would collapse beneath a sledge, sending explorers plunging into darkness. Storms struck without warning, obliterating tracks, scattering provisions, and tearing apart shelters built with meticulous care. And still, men pressed onward, convinced that beyond the next ridge lay triumph, that the next stretch of ice would yield revelation or passage. Yet the most harrowing challenge was psychological. Isolation gnawed at the mind as harshly as frostbitten fingers gnawed at flesh. Weeks without the warmth of sun, without the sound of birds or the smell of earth, unhinged even the strongest men. Whispers carried by wind became voices, shadows became figures, and every frozen object was a potential omen. Some explorers conversed with the memory of lost companions, naming shadows as if to anchor themselves to sanity. Others recorded long soliloquies in journals, speaking to no one but the pages. Madness was not uncommon, and in the frozen wilderness, it often came quietly, leaving the body alive while the mind drifted into an unseen void. Ambition, however, has a way of overriding fear. Even as ice claimed supplies and storms shattered camps, new generations of explorers followed. They were drawn by the stories of those entombed in ice, by journals recovered centuries later, by the silent testimony of ships locked in frozen bays. Each relic told the same story. Human will confronted the extreme, and in doing so, created legends. The lure of glory, the desire to know, the need to be remembered. These forces outweighed the cautionary tales of frost and death. Not all ambitions were solitary, however. Some were communal, shared among entire crews. They depended on cooperation, on trust, on the understanding that survival was as much about human connection as it was about skill. Decisions became matters of life and death. Rationing provisions, plotting the route across shifting ice, deciding when to press forward and when to turn back. Every action had consequences. A single miscalculation could doom an entire party, yet each success strengthened the bonds that allowed men to endure the relentless cold. And still, the ice preserved their stories. Rusted tools, frozen journals, abandoned camps, all became monuments to ambition and its cost. Some were triumphant, some tragic, yet all carried a lesson etched into the unforgiving terrain. The pursuit of the unknown is never without peril. Ships crushed beneath glaciers, explorers lost to snowstorms, bodies entombed beneath layers of frost. These relics became more than mere artifacts. They became warnings, inspirations, and eternal witnesses to human striving. The irony is stark. The land that claimed ambition also immortalized it. While men may vanish, their striving remains. The ice, indifferent yet meticulous, records each effort, each step, each breath against its frozen expanse. In this way, ambition survives even when men do not, entombed in time, preserved in ice, echoing across centuries. And so the polar frontier continued to challenge humanity, daring the next generation to follow. Ambition was no longer simply personal. It became ancestral, inherited through journals, maps, and the silent testimonies of the entombed. To venture forth was to honor those who came before, to confront the same merciless ice, to risk everything for a glimpse of the unknown. As the explorers pressed onward into the unbroken white, the entombed ambitions of countless predecessors became an invisible presence. Every step felt measured against those who had come before, every breath a reminder that ambition could both elevate and annihilate. Ships locked in ice, journals half-written, tents abandoned in storms. These relics whispered across centuries, a chorus of triumphs and failures, urging caution while igniting desire. The past and present converged, frozen in time, yet alive in memory. Storms tore through the land with unrelenting force, obliterating tracks, scattering supplies, and testing the limits of human endurance. Yet each calamity was met with resilience. Men learned to adapt, improvising shelters, rerouting sledges, salvaging provisions, and relying on instincts honed by hardship. In doing so, they paid homage to the ambitions of those entombed in ice, a silent acknowledgement that survival was as much about respect for the land as it was about defiance. Even in tragedy, there was meaning. The loss of a comrade, the collapse of a camp, the engulfing drift of snow that swallowed a ship, all served as grim reminders of the stakes. But within these losses lay lessons, etched into every journal, every carved note, every whispered story around a flickering fire. Ambition was never reckless. It was tempered by knowledge, by observation, by the painful experience of those who had vanished. To move forward was to learn from history, to respect the power of the ice while daring to reach beyond it. The psychology of ambition became evident in isolation. Men forced to confront days with no sun, weeks with no warmth, months with no relief, discovered the limits of their own resolve. Some succumbed to despair, wandering in stupor across the snow, their minds adrift as bodies trudged mechanically forward. Others transformed despair into determination, channeling fear into precise action, meticulous planning, and unwavering focus. The line between success and failure often rested upon this fragile balance of mind, the ability to endure not only the cold, but the ceaseless weight of expectation and self-imposed pressure. Relics of the past, discovered or imagined, strengthened resolve. A frozen journal, ink blurred by frost but words still legible, connected one generation to another. A rusted tool, abandoned in snow, became proof that ingenuity and perseverance had once defied the same merciless expanse. These artifacts did more than document history. They inspired, they educated, they demanded respect. Ambition was now a dialogue across time, an inheritance passed from those entombed to those who dared follow. Yet the paradox remained. Ambition was simultaneously the reason men survived and the reason they perished. It drove them into storms, into treacherous ice, into hunger and exhaustion. But without it, the frozen frontier would remain untouched, silent, and indifferent. Those who dared to press forward, even at the edge of death, became both witnesses and participants in a story that spanned centuries. They wrote their own lines into the icy manuscript of human striving, forever entwined with the fates of the entombed. As the final miles of this chapter's journey unfolded, the explorers understood that the polar regions were not merely a landscape, but a crucible. Ambition, untempered by caution or respect, would be destroyed. Ambition, nurtured with wisdom, endurance, and insight, would endure, leaving traces in the ice that outlived flesh. Ships, journals, bones, all became monuments to this delicate balance, reminders of both human frailty and remarkable resolve. And in this frozen theater, where storms roared and silence reigned, ambition remained eternal. The ice would claim men, but their striving, their courage, their relentless pursuit of the unknown would echo through the frozen corridors of time. Each new generation that stepped onto the ice carried with it the entombed ambitions of the past, moving forward not merely for themselves, but for the legacy of every soul who had ever dared to chase the horizon, only to be swallowed by the vast, indifferent white. Beneath the glittering sheets of ice, history waits in quiet patience. Buried deep within glaciers and snowfields lie fragments of lives long past, tools, clothing, journals, and bones preserved as if time itself feared to disturb them. The polar regions are more than landscapes. They are mausoleums, holding the remnants of explorers whose ambition carried them into oblivion. Each relic, frozen in place, tells a story that cannot be fully understood, yet demands attention, demands reverence. When first discovered, these frozen artifacts provoke wonder and unease in equal measure. A rusted ice axe, encrusted with frost, hints at a hand that once wielded it with precision and determination. A journal, pages stiff and cracked, holds words unfinished, a narrative frozen mid-thought. Clothing, matted with snow and ice, bears the imprint of the body it once shielded. Every item whispers of human striving against a merciless void, and yet, simultaneously, of human vulnerability, exposed and preserved for centuries beneath the indifferent cold. The ice itself seems to participate in this preservation. Layers upon layers of snow compress, forming a tomb that both conceals and protects. Organic material that would have rotted in warmer climes remains intact, a testament to the polar region's unique power. Wood, leather, and even human tissue endure, their survival an eerie defiance of nature's usual cycles. And within this frozen archive, each discovery carries with it a profound emotional weight, connecting the present to a distant past in a manner that is immediate, tangible, and deeply unsettling. Archaeologists and modern explorers tread lightly in these spaces, aware that each relic is fragile and sacred. A misplaced step can shatter centuries of preservation, erasing not just an object, but a connection to a human story suspended in ice. Yet the temptation to investigate is irresistible. To unearth a journal, to hold a tool, to see the imprint of a hand that has been gone for generations, these moments are encounters with history itself. They are silent dialogues, brief but intense, between the living and the long departed. Bones tell their own haunting stories. The remains of men and women, sometimes still clothed in the furs of their expedition, are found sprawled across glaciers or tucked into snowdrifts, as if seeking shelter even in death. Forensic analysis can reveal the last moments: a fracture from a fall, frostbite that consumed extremities, starvation etched into skeletal form. And yet, despite the clinical details, there is an undeniable human resonance. These are not mere specimens. They are the echoes of ambition, courage, and endurance, suspended in a world that cares neither for success nor failure. Relics are not always so straightforward. Some are mysterious, offering tantalizing glimpses into lives that cannot be fully reconstructed. A leather pouch, its contents indecipherable. A set of skis abandoned mid-descent. A half-frozen pot of melted snow beside a broken tent. Each artifact poses questions. Who used it? What trials had they faced? Did they survive, or were they claimed by the ice? In this sense, the polar frontier is a puzzle, a silent archive whose pieces are scattered across vast white expanses, waiting to be interpreted by those brave enough to look. Even objects that seem mundane, buttons, nails, fragments of rope, carry significance. They are traces of human presence, remnants of effort, of struggle, of survival against impossible odds. In the polar wilderness, there are no monuments carved in stone, no inscriptions in bronze. Instead, the artifacts themselves serve as markers of existence, of ambition, of the extraordinary lengths to which humans have gone to understand, conquer, and endure. And so, the frozen relics of time are both witnesses and teachers. They reveal the extremes of human experience, the intimate details of lives lived in confrontation with a relentless, indifferent world. To study them is to confront mortality, courage, and ambition simultaneously, to understand even briefly what it means to walk where so few have ever tread. And to leave the most haunting discoveries are those that blur the line between life and death. A tent, still partially collapsed under snow, might conceal tools, journals, and remnants of food, frozen as if the occupants had vanished moments ago. Sometimes footprints emerge from beneath the drifted ice, leading nowhere, swallowed once again by the eternal whiteness. Each trace carries a story half told, a narrative interrupted by the merciless hand of nature, leaving the observer to imagine the final moments with a mixture of reverence and dread. Ice preserves not only objects but moments. A partially eaten meal, a half-written entry, the imprint of a hand pressed into the snow. These are not mere artifacts, but frozen fragments of lived experience. They evoke empathy and speculation, drawing the modern observer into a dialogue with the past. One feels the biting cold, the weight of exhaustion, the gnawing fear, all transmitted across centuries by the stillness of frozen matter. To witness these relics is to stand at the edge of human fragility, to confront endurance and failure simultaneously. Some relics offer hints of human ingenuity. Sledges reinforced with iron, specialized clothing designed for extreme conditions, compact stoves for melting ice. These items reveal meticulous planning and adaptation. They show that survival depended not only on courage, but on knowledge, foresight, and the ability to manipulate a hostile environment with limited resources. Every object, no matter how small, speaks to the intellect and resolve of its creator, preserved against the relentless decay of time. Yet the relics also reveal the limits of human endeavor. A sled broken beyond repair, a journal whose final words trail off mid-sentence, a set of skis abandoned on a frozen ridge. These are stark reminders that skill, planning, and ambition cannot always conquer the polar void. The ice claims as it wills, indifferent to human effort. It simultaneously immortalizes it. What is destroyed is also preserved. What is lost becomes evidence of courage, and what is abandoned speaks volumes about the cost of striving in such an unforgiving place. The emotional resonance of these discoveries is profound. To find a personal item, a glove, a scarf, a journal entry, is to touch the intimate life of someone long gone. The mind attempts to reconstruct their story, to imagine their struggles, fears, and fleeting moments of hope. In that process, one is acutely aware of the continuum of human experience. Ambition, fear, creativity, despair, and courage intertwine across time, frozen into the very ice that claimed these explorers. Even in modern times, new expeditions uncover relics that challenge understanding. Some are artifacts from centuries-old journeys. Others may predate known human exploration of the polar regions, hinting at lost histories or forgotten travelers. Each discovery deepens the sense that the poles are more than barren expanses. They are archives of human endeavor, custodians of memory, holding stories that may never be fully told, but whose echoes persist across time. And yet, for all their preservation, relics are fragile. Ice shifts, glaciers grind, storms scour the surface. What survives today may be lost tomorrow, swallowed once again by snow and wind. This fragility mirrors the human experience itself. Life is transient, even in the face of monumental effort, and yet every act of striving leaves a trace, however fleeting, upon the world. In this frozen cathedral, each relic is a sacred testament. They remind us of human curiosity, determination, and the relentless quest to confront the unknown. They teach that survival is never guaranteed, that ambition is never unchallenged, and that every life, no matter how brief in the expanse of time, can leave an indelible mark upon the frozen frontier. Behind a trace that defies the eroding power of time itself. Some relics tell stories that transcend the personal and touch upon the collective struggle of humanity. A ship's hull, crushed by shifting glaciers, stands as a monument to countless hands and minds coordinated in pursuit of exploration. Each nail, each plank, each rope frozen in place represents decisions made, risks taken, and lives intertwined in the relentless march into the unknown. Such relics do not merely survive as objects. They endure as symbols of human tenacity and the ambition that drives civilization forward, even in the face of oblivion. The polar ice also holds secrets of failure, preserved as warnings. Tents flattened under snow, supplies scattered by storms, and hastily abandoned journals reveal the delicate balance between skill and catastrophe. Observers are confronted with the stark reality that human endeavor, however well-planned, is vulnerable to the indifferent forces of nature. And yet, in every failure, there is a lesson, a blueprint for survival, a cautionary tale that informs those who dare to follow. The relics are not just remnants. They are instructors, guiding the living through the perilous landscape with whispers from the past. Objects frozen for centuries often acquire an almost mystical quality. A pair of boots, stiff with ice, can evoke the solitary trek of an explorer across wide expanses where no sound penetrated except for the crunch of snow beneath his feet. A frozen compass hints at journeys interrupted, directions lost, paths forever obscured. These artifacts are more than mere tools. They are portals into human experience, connecting the present observer with someone who lived, struggled, and dreamed long before, in a world defined by extremes beyond comprehension. The most poignant relics are those that capture intimate human moments. A partially eaten meal, the imprint of a gloved hand, a note hastily scribbled before death. These fragments bridge time and circumstance. They offer glimpses of fear, hope, determination, and desperation, emotions frozen in a literal sense, yet alive in imagination. Standing before them, one feels a profound sense of empathy, an awareness of the shared vulnerability of all who have ever confronted forces larger than themselves. The ice, in preserving these traces, allows the dead to speak across centuries, creating a dialogue that is equal parts haunting and instructive. Modern expeditions, equipped with advanced technology, have uncovered relics that were once unimaginable. Lenses, cameras, and navigation devices, all preserved in the frozen matrix, testify to the evolution of exploration and the increasing complexity of human ambition. Yet the stories remain consistent. The ice demands respect, and human courage, ingenuity, and folly are inseparable from survival. Every artifact, whether a wooden sledge or a scientific instrument, encapsulates both achievement and the ever-present threat of annihilation, a tension that defines the polar frontier. Even as glaciers shift and centuries pass, the relics endure, defying decay and time, yet their permanence is illusory. Ice moves, storms rage, and the delicate traces of human presence may vanish again. This impermanence mirrors life itself. All effort is fleeting, yet every action leaves an echo. In this sense, the frozen relics of time are both fragile and eternal, reminding us of the delicate balance between human endeavor and the unforgiving world in which it is enacted. The lesson is unmistakable. To explore is to risk, to endure is to learn, and to leave a mark is to claim a fragile victory against a world that is otherwise indifferent. The relics, frozen yet alive with memory, testify to human ambition, courage, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. They are monuments not built of stone, but of ice, of endurance, and of the stories that refuse to be silenced by time. As explorers delved further into the frozen expanse, they discovered relics that seemed almost untouched by time, as if the ice itself had conspired to preserve them. A sled abandoned on a ridge, its runners intact and dusted with frost. A journal, ink-faded but still legible, chronicling days of endurance. Gloves pressed against snow, a silent reminder of the hand that once wore them. Each artifact became a bridge between past and present. Here, the polar wilderness was not simply a backdrop, but a custodian of human ambition, carefully cataloging the triumphs and failures of those who dared to enter its domain. The emotional impact of these discoveries is profound. Modern explorers, standing over centuries-old remains, feel a simultaneous awe and sorrow. Awe at the ingenuity, endurance, and courage required to traverse such inhospitable terrain. Sorrow for lives interrupted, ambitions frozen mid-journey, stories unfinished, and dreams unfulfilled. These relics humanize the ice. They are not abstract monuments. They are tangible evidence of lives lived on the edge of endurance, of decisions made under unimaginable pressure, and of the relentless pursuit of knowledge and exploration. Even objects of apparent mundanity, a chipped mug, a broken compass, a frayed rope, convey remarkable stories. Each bears witness to labor, care, and the minutiae of survival. They speak of human resilience and fragility simultaneously, highlighting the precarious balance between success and failure in the polar regions. What might seem insignificant becomes sacred, for it endured against impossible odds, carried forward by ice and time alike. Sometimes, the relics offer glimpses of unforeseen ingenuity. Makeshift repairs on sledges, adaptations to clothing, creative solutions for melting ice. These details reveal the resourcefulness required to endure in a world that offered no mercy. They also underscore the human capacity to innovate, even in the most extreme conditions. Every item preserved in the ice is a testament to problem-solving, courage, and the indomitable will to survive, highlighting the thin line between life and death that defined these expeditions. Yet the relics also carry warnings. They are reminders of the relentless cost of exploration, the narrow margins separating endurance from catastrophe. Tents shredded by storms, supplies scattered by shifting glaciers, journals abruptly ending mid-entry. All speak of the fragility of human endeavor. The ice preserves not only success but failure, offering a lesson that survival demands respect for both the environment and the limits of human capacity. To ignore these lessons is to court the same fate as those entombed within the frozen expanse. In their preservation, relics become storytellers, conveying complex narratives without a single spoken word. They reveal ambition, struggle, ingenuity, despair, and courage, all frozen in the cold embrace of ice. They challenge modern explorers to reflect on their own limits, ambitions, and resilience, creating a dialogue that transcends time. Standing before these frozen witnesses, one cannot help but feel connected to the continuum of human endeavor, a chain stretching across centuries, bound together by courage, curiosity, and the desire to confront the unknown. The frozen relics of time thus serve as both monuments and teachers. They are reminders that ambition endures, even when lives are extinguished, that human creativity and courage leave traces that can survive centuries, and that the pursuit of discovery carries both extraordinary reward and extreme risk. In this silent, icy cathedral, history is tangible, and every artifact speaks across the void of time, testifying to the enduring human spirit in a world that is otherwise indifferent, vast, and eternal. Beneath the glittering surface of the polar expanse, the ice conceals its secrets in veins and shadows. Crevasses yawning like ancient wounds, fissures that twist unpredictably beneath the snow, and tunnels carved by shifting glaciers form a hidden network, both a labyrinth and a testament to the land's constant motion. These veins are more than physical structures. They are metaphors for the hidden currents of time and memory, preserving relics, whispering warnings, and challenging all who dare traverse their depths. Explorers approaching these treacherous formations feel a mixture of awe and apprehension. The ice seems alive, groaning, cracking, and occasionally erupting with startling force, a reminder of its ever-present, unpredictable energy. Shadows stretch across the surface, deepening as sunlight strikes at oblique angles, turning ordinary snowfields into a maze of light and darkness. Every movement carries risk. One misstep, one misjudged angle, and a man could vanish into a chasm, lost to the frozen void forever. Navigating these veins of ice demands not only physical skill, but acute intuition. Experienced explorers read subtle cues, the texture of snow underfoot, the way the wind shifts, the sound of ice groaning in the distance. Each crevice and ridge becomes a test of perception and patience, a challenge to distinguish between solid ground and treacherous hollow. The line between survival and catastrophe is razor-thin, and yet, within this danger, there is a strange beauty, a testament to the land's power, elegance, and the delicate balance that sustains life in such extremes. Shadow plays a role as significant as the ice itself. Light refracts and bends in unexpected ways, revealing hidden ridges and obscuring sudden drops. During certain hours, long, dark silhouettes stretch across the glaciers, creating illusions that can confuse even the most vigilant. Explorers learn to trust instincts over sight, to feel the terrain through every muscle and sinew, to anticipate the land's subtle cues. Shadows become companions and adversaries alike, shaping perception, dictating pace, and offering constant reminders of the ice's dominance. Within these veins, relics lie hidden in remarkable preservation. A sledge trapped in a crevasse, tools frozen in layers of compacted snow, journals tucked into cracks, all speak to the intimate history of human endeavor in the polar reaches. These artifacts tell stories of exploration interrupted, ambition suspended, and the ever-present struggle between human determination and the relentless forces of nature. Each discovery is both exhilarating and sobering, a reminder of courage, ingenuity, and the frailty of life in a world so unforgiving. The veins of ice are also conveyors of memory. The land itself records the passage of time, the movement of glaciers pressing and shifting over centuries, gradually erasing traces while simultaneously preserving others. Footprints, camp remnants, and abandoned equipment can endure for decades, becoming relics for the future. The ice is impartial, indifferent to who falls or who survives. Yet through preservation, it grants immortality to some stories while quietly swallowing others. Explorers often speak of a peculiar reverence felt within these frozen arteries. The combination of shadow, silence, and hidden danger fosters reflection and introspection. Walking along a narrow ridge flanked by walls of ice, one is acutely aware of mortality, the magnitude of ambition, and the delicate thread that separates triumph from disaster. Every step is measured, deliberate, and laden with consequence. In these moments, the polar landscape reveals itself not as a passive backdrop, but as an active participant in human history, shaping, testing, and recording all who dare to traverse its depths. And yet, within this austere domain, there are glimpses of ethereal beauty. Sunlight refracted through ice produces a spectral glow. Frozen bubbles, trapped centuries ago, scatter light in prismatic arrays. Shadows shift with the wind, creating patterns that seem deliberate, almost sentient. These moments offer brief respite, a reminder that even in extremity, the polar world possesses an artistry that transcends danger, one that speaks to the mystery, majesty, and timelessness of life entombed in ice. Beneath the surface, the ice tells stories of movement and transformation. Crevasses open and close with subtle shifts, glaciers creep inexorably forward, and hidden caverns form in secret, creating landscapes that exist in constant flux. For explorers, these changes are both danger and guide, a living record of time's passage. To traverse this terrain is to read a story written in ice, a narrative of impermanence, power, and the quiet persistence of the frozen world. The shadows that stretch across glaciers are not merely visual. They are psychological. They distort distance, conceal sudden drops, and transform familiar terrain into a deceptive puzzle. Explorers rely on intuition as much as sight, reading the land through touch, sound, and movement. Even a subtle vibration, a crack forming beneath the weight of sledge, can signal imminent collapse. In these moments, awareness becomes survival, and the thin line between mastery and catastrophe is never more apparent. Within these veins lie artifacts whose stories are entwined with the very structure of the ice. Rusted ice axes, partially buried tents, and journals hidden in snow-filled crevasses tell of ambitions interrupted and journeys unfinished. A sledge, twisted by pressure, may mark the spot where a party halted in desperation, leaving behind tools and records that endure long after the bodies have vanished. Each relic is both a warning and a testament, a tangible echo of human perseverance pressed against the relentless forces of nature. The ice records more than human endeavor. It remembers failure. Crevasses swallow sledges whole, avalanches erase tracks in moments, and storms scatter the careful arrangements of camps in seconds. Yet in these acts of erasure, the land also preserves. Objects may sink beneath layers of snow only to resurface decades later, revealing the delicate tension between loss and survival. The polar environment becomes a chronicler, indifferent yet meticulous, documenting triumph and tragedy alike with impartial precision. Psychological endurance is tested as relentlessly as physical capability. Isolation within these icy veins amplifies fear and reflection. The shadows a constant reminder of the precariousness of existence. Explorers report hallucinations, whispers carried on the wind, and fleeting shapes glimpsed from the corner of an eye. The mind stretches to interpret, to understand, and sometimes to imagine threats where none exist. It is here, in the interplay of perception and reality, that the human spirit is most profoundly measured. Yet, amid peril, beauty persists. Ice formations glint in fractured sunlight, creating prisms that scatter color across wide expanses. Caverns glow with an ethereal luminescence, shadows bending into patterns that seem almost deliberate, as if the land itself were shaping a visual symphony. Even within a crevasse that could claim life in moments, there is artistry, precision, and awe-inspiring stillness that commands respect. In these fleeting instances, explorers glimpse a world untouched by time, a frozen cathedral where shadow and ice collaborate to tell their story. Veins of ice and shadow are more than obstacles. They are archives, teachers, and mirrors. They record ambition, endurance, and failure, preserving the essence of every journey that dared traverse them. Each discovery, each step, each artifact carries lessons in survival, in humility, and in the audacity of human curiosity. They remind us that the polar frontier is not merely a place to conquer, but a realm to understand, respect, and reflect upon. Traversing these hidden arteries is an exercise in both skill and reverence. Every crevasse crossed, every shadow navigated, every relic discovered is a dialogue with the past and a negotiation with the present. And through this dialogue, explorers come to understand that the veins of ice are not merely physical formations, but a living testament to the relentless, enigmatic, and eternal character of the polar world. Explorers venturing deeper into the veins of ice encounter a world of contrasts, sublime beauty intertwined with lethal danger. Walls of ice, smooth and polished in some places, jagged and menacing in others, form corridors that twist unpredictably. Shadows stretch and shrink with the shifting light, sometimes revealing hidden crevasses, sometimes concealing them entirely. Through this interplay of shadow, relics, and ice, explorers come to comprehend the polar frontier not as a static landscape, but as a living archive. It records every triumph, every failure, every ambition left unfinished. The veins of ice are veins of memory, channels through which human stories flow and endure, silent yet profound, challenging all who enter to respect their lessons and honor their revelations. The deeper one ventures into the veins of ice, the more the boundaries between past and present blur. Relics, shadows, and the ice itself merge into a continuum of memory. A frozen tent, a half-buried sledge, a journal etched with frostbitten handwriting, all become touchpoints linking the explorer with those who came before. Time in these corridors is both linear and suspended. Centuries collapse into moments, and a single misstep can bridge life and death in an instant. The ice preserves these stories with meticulous care. Layers of snow, compacted over decades, conceal and protect objects, creating a tomb that is at once lethal and sacred. Every artifact is a testament to human striving, ambition frozen mid-step, ingenuity preserved against decay, courage etched into the smallest details of life spent confronting the extreme. To hold a frozen journal or examine a frost-covered tool is to touch history itself, to feel the heartbeat of endeavors that endured against incomprehensible odds. Shadows, ever present and shifting, heighten both awe and trepidation. They obscure crevasses, distort perspective, and animate the landscape with eerie illusions. Explorers learn to trust instinct, to read subtle signs in texture, light, and sound, to anticipate hidden danger. The interplay of shadow and ice is a silent teacher, offering lessons in patience, observation, and respect. One cannot conquer these veins. One can only move through them with caution, awareness, and humility. Within these corridors, the echoes of ambition and loss resonate profoundly. The artifacts scattered along ridges, tucked into fissures, or trapped beneath snowfields remind observers of the human cost of exploration. A sledge crushed by a glacier, boots abandoned mid-stride, a journal frozen open. These traces offer intimate glimpses of struggle and sacrifice. They testify to resilience, determination, and the fragility of life in a realm where success is measured not only in achievement, but in the endurance of spirit. Yet the veins of ice are not solely a domain of peril. In rare moments, sunlight refracted through ice transforms shadows into a display of otherworldly beauty. Walls glow in spectral hues, frozen bubbles scatter color like constellations, and the interplay of light and shadow creates patterns that seem deliberate, almost sentient. These glimpses offer fleeting respite, a reminder that even in extremity, the polar world possesses artistry, majesty, and a silent poetry that transcends danger. As explorers navigate this frozen labyrinth, they encounter lessons etched not only in objects, but in the landscape itself. Crevasses, fractures, and shifting ice are both hazards and narratives, documenting centuries of movement, pressure, and change. They convey the impermanence of life, the resilience of ambition, and the enduring imprint of human presence. Every journey through these veins is simultaneously an exploration of space and a communion with time, connecting the living to those whose lives have been entombed in ice. The final lesson of the veins of ice is one of reverence. Survival depends not on conquest, but on understanding, on humility, on respecting both the beauty and the danger inherent in the polar frontier. The ice is a witness, a teacher, and a preserver, recording triumphs and tragedies alike, ensuring that ambition, courage, and human endeavor endure even when the explorers themselves have vanished. To traverse these veins is to engage with eternity, to step lightly yet purposefully, and to honor the silent legacy preserved within the frozen shadows. In this frozen cathedral, where ice flows like veins and shadows dance with light, the polar frontier reveals its most profound truths. It preserves memory, enshrines ambition, and immortalizes human courage against a backdrop of indifferency. Here, the past is tangible, the present fragile, and the future uncertain. Yet through all, the story of humanity persists, etched in ice, carried in shadows, and whispered across the ages. Beyond the unbroken white of the polar frontier, echoes persist, echoes of ambition, of lives spent confronting extremes, of dreams frozen mid-motion. The ice, though silent to the casual observer, reverberates with the stories of explorers who ventured into its vastness, leaving traces of existence that defy both time and oblivion. These echoes are not merely sounds, but imprints, impressions left on the land, artifacts preserved in frost, and memories etched into the mind of every successive traveler who dares follow. The landscape itself seems alive with memory. Every ridge, every crevasse, every subtle contour of the glaciers carries evidence of human endeavor. Sledges abandoned in mid-expedition, half-buried tents, journals stiff with ice. Each relic whispers of ambition and perseverance. Standing before them, one is struck by the continuity of human struggle, the timeless drive to push boundaries, to confront uncertainty, and to endure against relentless odds. It is as if the ice itself conspires to preserve these stories, holding them in eternal suspension for those willing to look, to reflect, and to honor the past. Explorers who encounter these echoes experience a profound blend of awe and humility. They see the fragility of human life mirrored in the delicate balance of ice, the vulnerability of ambition against a world that is indifferent yet magnificent. The frozen relics are silent teachers, demonstrating that courage is inseparable from caution, and that triumph often comes at the cost of great risk. One feels the presence of those who came before, not as ghosts, but as enduring symbols of determination and human resilience. Even the smallest objects evoke a sense of connection. A glove frozen mid-step, a tattered map, a fragment of rope. These artifacts suggest lives lived with purpose and intent, moments of struggle that endure beyond death. They humanize the landscape, transforming the vast whiteness into a repository of stories, ambitions, and experiences. Every discovery is a dialogue across time, a bridge linking the living with those entombed in ice, a reminder that human presence leaves marks even in the most inhospitable corners of the world. The polar echoes also carry warnings. Every crevasse swallowed, every storm that scattered supplies, every life lost reminds modern explorers that survival depends on vigilance, respect, and adaptation. Ambition alone cannot overcome the forces of nature. Knowledge, experience, and awareness are as crucial as courage. The ice preserves lessons as carefully as it preserves relics, recording the consequences of every choice, every misstep, every moment of hubris. To hear the echoes is to understand that triumph is inseparable from danger, that every pursuit into the unknown carries risk as well as reward. Psychologically, the echoes are transformative. To witness a relic frozen in place, to trace footprints that have lain undisturbed for decades, is to confront both mortality and legacy. One senses the hopes, fears, and determination of individuals who faced unimaginable challenges. It is a confrontation with the continuum of human endeavor, ambition stretching across generations, human spirit confronting extremes, and memory persisting in defiance of decay. The ice becomes both a mirror and a lens, reflecting the past while focusing the observer on the endurance and courage required to venture beyond the familiar. Yet amidst these echoes, there is a haunting beauty. Sunlight refracts through ice crystals, casting kaleidoscopic patterns that animate the frozen landscape. Shadows stretch across ridges, twisting and bending as if alive. Winds carry a hollow resonance, a subtle murmur of movement that seems to echo distant voices. These phenomena, though ephemeral, deepen the sense of connection between the observer and the frozen archive, transforming the polar frontier into a living, breathing record of ambition, struggle, and endurance. The echoes beyond the ice are not solely remnants of individual lives. They are cumulative, forming a collective memory that stretches across centuries. Each expedition, whether triumphant or tragic, leaves traces that become part of a larger narrative. A journal half buried in snow, a sled crushed beneath the weight of a glacier, even the faint imprint of a boot pressed into a frozen ridge. These are not isolated incidents, but threads woven into the expansive tapestry of human endeavor against the polar frontier. Every discovery carries both revelation and reflection. The observer is confronted with the tension between ambition and mortality, courage and caution. The ice does not reward recklessness, nor does it favor those who underestimate its power. Yet, it honors persistence, ingenuity, and respect for its hidden forces. A sledge carefully navigated across a shifting glacier, a well-maintained tent braving months of storms, or a journal meticulously preserved in snow. These are monuments of strategy, endurance, and foresight, immortalized in frost for generations to witness. The psychological resonance of encountering such echoes is profound. Modern explorers often describe an almost spiritual awareness, the sensation of standing in the presence of lives frozen in time. The ice, seemingly silent, communicates through objects, impressions, and subtle shifts in the landscape. Each artifact is imbued with intention, effort, and context. Every relic invites contemplation, demanding that the observer acknowledge the human spirit that persisted against the extreme. In this dialogue between past and present, lessons of resilience and humility emerge, quietly, insistently. Even ordinary items are transformed by context. A chipped mug, a fragment of rope, a glove stiff with ice, mundane by nature. Yet within the frozen landscape, they assume monumental significance. They are evidence of survival, of adaptation, of ingenuity under duress. They reveal the minutiae of human life, the calculated rationing of food, the improvisation required when tools fail, the tactile interactions with a harsh environment. In these details, the polar frontier narrates its stories, both intimate and universal. Some relics hint at abrupt endings, the consequences of miscalculation or uncontrollable forces. A journal that ends mid-sentence, a sledge tipped into a hidden crevasse, a tent flattened beneath accumulated snow. These artifacts are stark reminders of the fragility of life and the high stakes of ambition. Yet even these losses carry meaning. They speak of courage, determination, and the enduring human desire to confront the unknown, even when the outcome is uncertain. The ice does not judge. It preserves, creating a dialogue that is both cautionary and inspiring. The echoes extend beyond material remnants. Footprints frozen in compacted snow, faint lines where sledges carved paths, and disturbances in the landscape left by long-departed explorers all serve as intangible records. They allow modern adventurers to trace the steps of those who came before, to walk paths once taken, and to feel the weight of history beneath their feet. In this way, The polar frontier becomes not only a site of discovery, but a living archive, continuously interacting with the present while conserving the past. Amid the danger, beauty endures. Sunlight glints on ice, creating illusions of movement within the stillness. Wing-carved patterns in snow evoke artistry beyond human design. Shadows stretch and bend across frozen valleys, sometimes revealing relics hidden for decades. These moments, fleeting yet unforgettable, serve as reminders that the polar world is simultaneously adversary and muse. It challenges, humbles, and inspires, demanding that those who venture into its expanses do so with respect, awareness, and a recognition of the continuity of human endeavor. Through these echoes, the polar frontier teaches that ambition is timeless, courage enduring, and memory persistent. The ice records everything, triumphs, failures, hopes, and fears, and presents them to those willing to observe, reflect, and learn. To step into this realm is to engage with both the fragility and resilience of humanity, to witness stories preserved across centuries, and to understand that beyond the frozen expanse, echoes endure, carrying with them the essence of lives lived fully against the relentless vastness of the ice. The ice is a storyteller, yet it tells in fragments, in traces, in moments suspended between life and eternity. A journal frozen in a crevasse may reveal a single observation, a fleeting thought, or an unfinished plan. A sled, partially crushed and half buried in snow, tells of determination, of labor, of the delicate balance between survival and surrender. These artifacts are pieces of a narrative larger than any individual, a mosaic of human ambition pressed against the immutable forces of nature. Explorers moving through these frozen corridors often report a peculiar awareness, an understanding that they are participants in a continuum. Their presence intersects with those who came centuries before, whose lives and choices are encoded in the very landscape. The echoes are not passive. They demand reflection, caution, and respect. One misstep in the labyrinthine ice veins could replicate the mistakes of the past. Yet careful attention, patience, and observation allow the living to navigate these dangers while connecting to a history written in frost. The psychological weight is profound. To see a glove, worn and frost-covered, or a journal whose ink has endured centuries, is to confront mortality and ambition simultaneously. It is a reminder that courage is inseparable from vulnerability, and that human striving, no matter how brilliant, exists within a larger, indifferent framework of nature. These relics are lessons in humility. Triumph is celebrated, but always alongside the reminder of fragility. Even in success, the ice demands vigilance, respect, and awareness. Yet, within this austere and demanding environment, moments of beauty transform perception. Sunlight refracted through crystal-clear ice creates patterns of ethereal color. Shadows shift across ridges, forming illusions of movement. Frozen bubbles, captured over centuries, scatter light like stars scattered across a cosmos of white. These glimpses are fleeting, yet they elevate the experience, reminding explorers that the polar frontier is not solely a domain of danger, but a canvas where time, ice, and human endeavor converge to produce awe-inspiring artistry. Even ordinary objects, when encountered in context, gain profound significance. A frayed rope, a chipped mug, a piece of tattered clothing, each becomes a testament to the human capacity for endurance, ingenuity, and adaptation. They reveal the minutiae of life under extreme conditions, the care with which supplies were rationed, the improvisations necessary to endure, the tactile engagement with an environment that demands constant attention. In these small details, the ice communicates volumes, silently narrating stories of perseverance and human spirit. Some relics reveal abrupt, haunting endings. A journal whose final words trail off mid-sentence, a tent crushed beneath accumulated snow, a sled tipped into a hidden crevasse. These serve as warnings as much as memorials. They are proof that the polar world, magnificent though it is, does not bend to human will. Yet even these failures are preserved, encoded in ice, teaching future generations the importance of respect, preparation, and vigilance. The echoes are unflinching but instructive, reminding observers that ambition is measured not by conquest alone, but by endurance, wisdom, and survival. The polar echoes extend beyond objects. They reside in the land itself. Footprints, sled tracks, and subtle alterations in the snow form an ephemeral record of passage. They allow modern explorers to trace paths of centuries-old journeys, to step into moments long past, and to feel the presence of lives interwoven with the ice. These traces connect generations, creating a temporal bridge through which courage, ambition, and memory flow. The polar frontier becomes not only a place of exploration, but a living archive, preserving human endeavor and echoing its lessons across time. The final corridors of ice, farthest from human settlement, hold the most profound echoes. In these remote reaches, relics lie undisturbed, buried beneath layers of compacted snow and ice. A frostbitten journal, a half-collapsed tent, a sled frozen in place, all preserve stories of courage and endurance, while whispering of the consequences of miscalculation. These frozen chronicles are both testament and warning. Ambition endures, but it is always measured by the unforgiving realm in which it is enacted. Walking through these silent expanses, explorers are acutely aware of their place within history. They feel the weight of countless footsteps pressed into the snow before them, the presence of lives spent chasing discovery and survival. The ice does not merely preserve, it communicates. A creaking glacier, a subtle shift beneath a sledge, a play of shadow across a ridge. Each signal is a reminder that the land is alive, vigilant, and eternal. The echoes of human endeavor intertwine with the pulse of the polar world, creating a dialogue that spans centuries. Even the harshest losses hold meaning. Abandoned boots, torn clothing, and fractured sledges reveal the limits of human resilience, yet also celebrate human tenacity. They are monuments not built of stone, but of survival, struggle, and enduring spirit. Through these relics, the polar frontier conveys a lesson impossible to ignore, that ambition and courage, though subject to the whims of nature, are recorded and remembered, their echoes transcending the transient fragility of life. The beauty of the ice, intertwined with its danger, magnifies the impact of these echoes. Sunlight glinting through frozen crevasses creates spectral colors, shadows stretch like living beings across ridges, and wind-carved patterns in the snow evoke artistry that no human hand could replicate. Even in extremity, the polar world reveals itself as both adversary and muse, demanding respect, inspiring awe, and shaping those who traverse it in ways as profound as any artifact could. The echoes are also cumulative, forming a web of human endeavor across time. One discovery leads to another. A journal hints at a location. A sledge points toward a hidden crevasse. A boot left atop a ridge guides the path to a buried relic. Each encounter deepens the understanding of the human stories entombed in ice, offering insight into the challenges, ingenuity, and sacrifices of generations of explorers. The ice becomes both a library and a teacher, preserving narratives that cannot be written in conventional archives, stories that demand contemplation and reverence. Yet, for all their permanence, the echoes are fragile. Glaciers shift, snowdrifts bury paths, and storms erase surface traces. The polar frontier reminds observers that memory, like life, is delicate and precious. Every footprint, every artifact, every shadowed crevasse that survives is a fleeting victory against the relentless march of time. The ice ensures that some stories endure while others are reclaimed by the world, silently reinforcing the transient nature of existence and the persistence of memory. In the end, the echoes beyond the ice are a testament to humanity itself, to curiosity, courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to confront the unknown. They reveal ambition and vulnerability, triumph and tragedy, perseverance and loss. Standing amid frozen relics and shifting shadows, one senses the continuity of human endeavor, the unbroken thread of exploration that spans centuries, and the profound lessons preserved by the polar frontier. The polar world is eternal, yet it carries the imprint of all who dared to enter. In its ice, shadows, and hidden veins, the echoes persist, reminding us that every life, every journey, every moment of courage leaves a mark, however fragile, in the eternal cathedral of snow and frost. To witness them is to touch history, to feel human spirit intertwined with nature, and to understand that beyond the frozen horizon, stories endure, whispered forever through the ice, shadow. Beneath the endless white, the polar frontier conceals lives once vibrant, now entombed in silence. In the hollowed ridges and the deep fissures of glaciers, the ice cradles stories that were never told, journeys that never reached their conclusion. Each abandoned sledge, each frostbitten boot, each fragment of a journal is a whisper from the past, revealing moments of hope, fear, and the unyielding determination to survive. These relics do not simply endure. They demand attention, compelling the living to piece together fragments of ambition frozen in time. The frozen landscape is more than a setting. It is a character, shaping the destinies of those who tread upon it. Storms howl with an almost sentient intensity, and temperatures plummet with lethal indifference. Explorers move cautiously across this terrain, every step a negotiation with a silent adversary, every decision weighed against the ice's immutable laws. Yet within this darkness lies a strange intimacy, a connection between human effort and the silent witness of a landscape that preserves even the smallest details. Among these frozen corridors lie traces of hidden lives, objects and artifacts that suggest stories of ingenuity, desperation, and endurance. A broken lens from a century-old camera, a partially eaten ration, a glove left atop a ridge. Each offers a glimpse into daily existence in conditions that defy imagination. These fragments, though seemingly ordinary, reveal the extraordinary lengths to which humans went to endure, to explore, and to leave a mark upon a world indifferent to ambition. Sometimes, the ice preserves moments of startling intimacy. Notes hastily written in journals, sketches scrawled on scraps of paper, or the careful arrangement of supplies before a storm. These relics evoke the human desire for order, memory, and expression, even in extreme isolation. They are reminders that life, even at its most fragile, seeks meaning, connection, and permanence. The ice, in preserving these ephemeral acts, grants a voice to those long gone, allowing modern observers to touch the edge of existence that would otherwise have been lost. The preservation is meticulous, almost miraculous. Layers of compacted snow act as both shield and tomb, protecting objects from decay while sealing them within a temporal capsule. Explorers uncover sledge remnants pressed into ice, journals stiff but legible, tools adapted for survival under unimaginable strain. Each artifact provides insight not only into the physical struggle of exploration, but also into the inner lives of those who dared to confront a world that offered beauty and terror in equal measure. These hidden lives are more than historical footnotes. They are living echoes, teaching lessons about endurance, human ingenuity, and the limits of ambition. A sled abandoned in haste may reveal improvisation under pressure. A tent crushed beneath the snow may suggest a storm's sudden wrath. Even the smallest traces, a frayed strap, a cracked cup, a glove frozen mid-motion, communicate volumes about the careful, calculated efforts required to navigate such extremities. The ice is impartial. It does not judge courage or falter before human ambition. Yet, in its impartiality, it offers lessons written not in words, but in survival, endurance, and the traces left behind. Each relic, each hidden life preserved within the frozen world, contributes to a silent narrative, a story of resilience tested against the cold, of human spirit pitted against nature's grandeur and indifference. Observers are compelled to read carefully, to discern meaning, and to honor the legacy of those who came before. Even in the starkest desolation, there are moments of fragile beauty. Sunlight filters through ice crevices, illuminating patterns frozen in time. Wind-carved ridges cast shadows that twist and stretch in endless permutations. Frozen bubbles and crystalline layers scatter light like a constellation suspended in midair. Within these ephemeral displays, the polar frontier reminds us that life, even when confronted by extreme conditions, persists in unexpected forms, creating moments of transcendence amidst the struggle and time itself. As explorers delve deeper into the hidden veins of the ice, they begin to see patterns in the relics left behind, signs of strategy, of adaptation, of survival instinct sharpened to its finest edge. A carefully packed sled, a journal tucked beneath a stone for protection, a series of markings in the snow. These fragments reveal the rhythms of life in an unforgiving environment. Each discovery adds another layer to the narrative of human endurance, illustrating how ordinary objects can carry extraordinary meaning when pressed against the extremity of nature. The hidden lives preserved in ice often reveal ingenuity born of necessity. Sledges reinforced with scavenged materials, clothing patched from scraps, improvised shelters erected against relentless winds. These details tell stories of resourcefulness under duress. They highlight not only physical skill, but the mental resilience required to survive in a world where a single misstep could lead to catastrophe. Every object is a lesson in adaptation, a testament to the capacity of human determination to confront and coexist with an indifferent environment. Yet there is a haunting intimacy in these frozen traces. Personal items, once mundane, become portals into lives interrupted by circumstance or nature's unyielding hand. Gloves worn to shreds, a hat lost to a storm, a journal left open mid-sentence. These items are silent witnesses to human vulnerability. They provoke reflection on mortality, ambition, and the fleeting nature of life. In confronting them, modern explorers experience an uncanny connection across time, as though the frozen frontier itself reaches back to engage those who walk upon it centuries later. The polar ice records extremes not only of environment but of human emotion. Moments of hope, frustration, fear, and determination are embedded in the careful arrangement of supplies. The notes written in journals, and even in the seemingly haphazard positioning of equipment. Each artifact is a coded message from the past, offering insight into the thoughts and strategies of those who faced unimaginable isolation. To read these traces is to participate in a silent dialogue, to feel the rhythm of lives lived on the edge of endurance. Natural forces, however, remain impartial and ever-present. Shifting glaciers, sudden crevasses, blinding storms, all shape the disposition of hidden relics, sometimes burying them for centuries, sometimes exposing them in unexpected ways. The landscape is both a preserver and a destroyer, offering glimpses into the past while simultaneously challenging explorers to understand the delicate balance between discovery and danger. This duality underscores the tension inherent in polar exploration. Wonder and peril exist side by side, inseparable and ever-present. The ice itself becomes a narrator, preserving evidence of human interaction while illustrating the relentless forces at work in the environment. Footprints hardened in snow, sledge tracks trapped beneath layers of ice, and signs of campfires extinguished by wind all become fragments of a larger story. They transform the landscape into a living archive where the past and present intersect. Observers are reminded that every step taken, every decision made, and every object left behind contributes to a narrative that stretches beyond individual lifetimes. Amidst the peril and austerity, moments of fragile beauty punctuate the journey. Light refracts through crevices, illuminating frozen bubbles suspended in time. Shadows stretch across ridges, twisting in intricate patterns. Ice formations glint with a spectral brilliance under the low polar sun. These ephemeral glimpses are a counterpoint to the harsh realities of survival, demonstrating that even in extremity, the polar frontier offers wonder and artistry, rewarding those who move with awareness and respect. The hidden lives preserved in ice are ultimately reminders of continuity and resilience. Each relic, every trace, and all subtle signs of past existence underscore the enduring presence of human ambition. They convey lessons about courage, ingenuity, and humility, inviting modern explorers to engage not only with the physical terrain but with the emotional and historical layers embedded within it. In the quiet, frozen expanse, the lives of the past resonate, compelling reflection, reverence, and awe. The deeper explorers move into the polar expanse, the more pronounced the interplay between survival and memory becomes. Every relic uncovered carries with it not only the weight of material history, but also the emotional resonance of lives once lived. A tent half buried in snow, a journal stiff with frost, or a sledge crushed under the shifting ice is more than a remnant. It is a fragment of a story, frozen mid-motion, suspended between triumph and tragedy. These frozen fragments compel the living to acknowledge ambition, failure, and endurance in their purest forms. Within these hidden chambers of ice, the environment itself seems to participate in storytelling. Crevasses whisper under pressure, glaciers shift imperceptibly, and the wind carves patterns across the snow, highlighting relics or obscuring them in unpredictable ways. These dynamics demand heightened awareness. To navigate is to listen to the ice, to feel its pulse, and to interpret its subtle messages. Each step taken is both a negotiation with the present and a conversation with history, revealing the delicate balance between human intent and natural forces. Objects discovered here reveal intimate human gestures. Notes jotted hastily on scraps of paper, utensils arranged carefully within a sledge, a glove positioned on a ridge as if paused mid-use. These items carry traces of thought, intention, and emotion. They speak of meticulous planning, of improvisation in moments of crisis, and of the relentless human effort to assert order amid chaos. In observing them, modern explorers gain insight not only into survival techniques, but also into the mindset and spirit of those who face the vast, indifferent ice. Even ordinary items take on extraordinary significance in context. A broken lens, a tattered map, or a piece of rope gains symbolic weight when preserved in ice. Each bears witness to adaptation, ingenuity, and endurance under extreme conditions. They demonstrate the practical strategies devised for survival, while also offering a glimpse into human creativity, resourcefulness, and the subtle ways in which lives were structured to confront danger and uncertainty. These frozen relics transform into chronicles of persistence, ingenuity, and vulnerability. The ice preserves both triumph and tragedy with impartial care. A journal may tell of a successful trek across a glacier, only to end abruptly, revealing the suddenness with which fortune can shift. A sledge left in haste may hint at a forced retreat from a storm, and a lone boot abandoned atop a ridge signals peril encountered too late. These preserved moments convey lessons to the living. Ambition and courage must be tempered by awareness, respect, and preparation. The polar frontier is at once teacher and judge, impartial yet instructive, shaping understanding through preserved consequences. Psychologically, the frozen relics exert a profound influence. Standing amid the artifacts of lives interrupted, one cannot help but confront mortality, human fragility, and the relentless passage of time. These echoes of the past provoke reflection on ambition, perseverance, and the price of exploration. The relics are a bridge across centuries, connecting modern observers with those who dared venture into the unknown, whose stories endure in silence beneath layers of ice. Amidst this darkness, beauty emerges in moments of fleeting brilliance. Light refracting through ice crystals paints spectral patterns. Shadows twist along ridges in illusions of movement. Wind-carved shapes echo the rhythm of the unseen. These ephemeral spectacles, interwoven with relics of human endeavor, remind explorers that even the harshest landscapes hold aesthetic power and subtle poetry. The polar world is unforgiving, yet it is capable of awe, inspiring both reverence and reflection. Through these preserved lives and hidden secrets, the polar frontier offers enduring lessons. It teaches resilience, humility, and the importance of observation, patience, and respect. It demonstrates that even amidst danger and desolation, human ambition leaves traces that persist, revealing both the extraordinary capacities and fragile vulnerabilities of those who dare to confront the unknown. As explorers reach the farthest, most secluded reaches of the polar frontier, the frozen relics take on a new sacred quality. Each artifact, from a frost-crusted journal to a sledge pressed into ice, carries with it a story suspended between life and eternity. Here, time is both flattened and elongated. Centuries collapse into moments, and a single misstep can echo across history. The ice preserves not just objects, but the essence of the lives that created them. Ambitions, fears, victories, and sacrifices frozen for all who follow to witness. In these hidden corridors, the interplay of light and shadow becomes a narrative device of its own. Sunlight penetrating through ice crevasses transforms walls into glowing mosaics, while shadows stretch and bend, animating the frozen landscape. These visual signals guide explorers, highlighting crevasses, revealing relics, and sometimes concealing dangers beneath layers of snow. The environment itself communicates, and to move safely within it requires acute observation, patience, and respect. Survival here is not merely a physical challenge. It is a dialogue with history and nature simultaneously. Every relic carries lessons, some subtle, some stark. A sledge abandoned in haste tells of urgency and the peril of miscalculation. A journal left open mid-sentence conveys interrupted thought and the fragility of human effort. Even small, overlooked items like a frayed glove or a cracked cup testify to endurance and adaptation. In studying these objects, explorers understand not only survival strategies, but also the psychological resilience required to endure isolation, fear, and the relentless severity of the polar world. The preservation is meticulous, almost miraculous. Layers of compacted snow act as both shield and archive, maintaining fragile items for decades, even centuries. Glacial shifts expose or conceal relics unpredictably, creating moments of revelation that feel almost orchestrated by time itself. Each discovery is a conversation across centuries, a voice reaching out from the past, demanding to be acknowledged, respected, and understood. In this way, the polar frontier becomes a living, breathing chronicle, recording human endeavor with impartial rigor. Even amid desolation, moments of breathtaking beauty punctuate the frozen landscape. Crystals refract light into prismatic colors, wing-sculpted snow glistens with a delicate artistry, and ice formations shimmer under low sun angles like frozen cathedrals. These fleeting spectacles, juxtaposed with relics of human struggle, remind observers that the polar frontier is simultaneously adversary and muse. It challenges, humbles, and inspires, blending danger and wonder into an immersive, unforgettable experience. The echoes of hidden lives extend beyond physical remnants. Footprints in hardened snow, faint sled tracks, and subtle disturbances in the ice are all part of the polar narrative. They allow modern explorers to trace the steps of those long gone, to witness paths once traversed, and to feel the weight of history beneath their own. The landscape itself becomes a repository of memory, preserving lessons in endurance, strategy, and respect for the unforgiving environment. Ultimately, these hidden lives and frozen secrets testify to the human spirit. They reveal ambition tempered by caution, ingenuity sharpened by necessity, and resilience tested against the extremes of nature. Each artifact, each trace, each echo preserved in ice is a reminder that human endeavor, no matter how ephemeral, leaves an imprint capable of enduring centuries. In this frozen cathedral of history, the past converses with the present, and explorers are compelled to listen, reflect, and learn. The polar frontier is eternal, yet it carries the mark of every life that dared to enter. The hidden relics, frozen footprints, and whispers of bygone journeys create a continuum of human endeavor and memory. To encounter them is to step into a narrative larger than oneself, to feel the weight of courage and ambition, and to understand that even in the harshest, most desolate landscapes, the human story persists, resilient, poignant, and eternal. Beneath the silent expanse of ice, hidden worlds lie undisturbed, guarding secrets older than any living memory. Crevasses twist like frozen rivers, tunnels open beneath glaciers, and snowfields conceal relics long lost to time. To penetrate these depths is to confront both the extraordinary and the terrifying, to move through spaces where the earth itself preserves fragments of lives, ambitions, and moments of triumph and tragedy. Each layer of ice, each hidden cavity, holds stories that have waited centuries to be rediscovered. Explorers venturing into these concealed spaces encounter a landscape that is both mesmerizing and perilous. Walls of ice glow with pale blue luminescence. Shadows stretch and shift across jagged formations, and the occasional glint of metal or fabric signals relics long abandoned. Every discovery is an intimate dialogue between human persistence and the natural world's impartiality, a reminder that survival requires not only strength, but observation, patience, and respect for the hidden forces beneath the frozen surface. The artifacts themselves are often as enigmatic as the terrain. Sledges trapped mid-expedition, journals frozen open, personal belongings pressed into ice. Each object hints at lives interrupted, ambitions left unfinished, and the fragility of human endeavor. A glove lying atop a ridge, a partially buried tent, even a small fragment of rope can spark questions. Who touched this? What struggle led to its abandonment? How did the frozen frontier dictate the outcome of these lives? These are questions the ice preserves, unanswered, waiting for the eyes of the present to witness their silent testimony. Movement beneath the ice is a negotiation with both history and hazard. Crevasses shift unpredictably. Ice walls groan under pressure, and hidden snow bridges can collapse without warning. The explorer's senses must extend beyond the obvious, interpreting subtle vibrations, shifting light, and the whisper of the wind across a hollowed ridge. Here, every step is both literal and symbolic, a step into the unknown, into the layered past, and into the enduring story of human endurance against the indifferent yet sublime forces of nature. Within these hidden corridors, small discoveries illuminate lives in unexpected detail. A journal entry, partially legible, reveals the meticulous accounting of supplies and rations, the thoughts and fears of a traveler who confronted isolation with courage. A piece of worn clothing, a frayed strap, a broken instrument. Each item provides insight into the daily existence of those who risked everything to explore, mapping the extremes of endurance, the subtle rhythms of adaptation, and the intimate details of human life frozen in space and time. The psychological effect of these encounters is profound. Explorers often report a sense of presence, as though the lives once lived in these frozen depths are watching, guiding, and challenging the living to understand both the fragility and resilience inherent in ambition. The ice does not judge, yet it records every triumph and failure with impartial clarity, forcing reflection on mortality, courage, and the unyielding force of nature. These hidden relics become mirrors, revealing not only history, but also the enduring essence of human spirit. Amid danger, beauty emerges as both respite and revelation. Light filtering through narrow ice tunnels refracts into colors unseen in the open world. Frozen bubbles scatter like stars, and shadows create illusions of movement within the stillness. These fleeting spectacles, intertwined with relics of human endeavor, remind explorers that the polar frontier is as much a canvas of aesthetic wonder as it is a test of survival. The frozen world challenges, humbles, and inspires, demanding awareness and reflection, and offering glimpses of sublime artistry along the way. Even the smallest artifact becomes monumental when seen in context. A chipped cup, a fragment of rope, a glove left mid-stride transforms into a testament of ingenuity, persistence, and human presence against overwhelming odds. Every object preserved beneath the ice conveys lessons of adaptation, endurance, careful planning, and the psychological strength required to confront uncertainty. Through these relics, the polar frontier tells stories that survive centuries, narratives that are simultaneously cautionary, inspirational, and profoundly human. The deeper one ventures into the hidden corridors beneath the ice, the more apparent the dialogue between human endeavor and natural forces becomes. Crevasses invisible beneath snowfields form barriers both physical and symbolic, demanding vigilance, patience, and respect. Every artifact uncovered is a testament to lives negotiating this complex terrain. A journal trapped mid-sentence, a sledge partially crushed beneath shifting ice, a pair of boots left at the edge of a ridge, each a frozen moment of decision, ambition, and survival. These relics reveal ingenuity shaped by extremity. Explorers adapted clothing, repaired tools, and fortified shelters with remarkable creativity. Sledges were modified to traverse treacherous terrain. Rations were meticulously planned, rationed, and sometimes abandoned in haste. Every improvisation, every adaptation, becomes a fragment of a larger story, illustrating the fine balance between human capability and the vast, indifferent power of nature. In studying these objects, modern explorers glimpse the strategies, intelligence, and resilience required to endure the polar frontier. Even mundane items transform into profound symbols in context. A cracked lens, a tattered map, a frost-stiffened rope, ordinary in isolation, extraordinary when preserved in ice. They reveal both the logistical challenges of survival and the subtle human gestures that accompany ambition, meticulous care, cautious improvisation, and the unspoken hope that effort might prevail against overwhelming odds. These small relics, when viewed together, compose a mosaic of life, endurance, and ingenuity frozen in space and time. Psychologically, the effect is striking. Standing amid these preserved lives, explorers experience a sensation akin to touching history, a connection with human determination that transcends centuries. There is a dual awareness of mortality and legacy, the fragility of individual life, juxtaposed with the enduring presence of human ambition etched into the ice. Every artifact becomes a portal, offering insight into the mindset of those who ventured into extremes, who balanced courage with caution, and who confronted isolation with ingenuity. The environment, however, remains an impartial teacher. Glaciers shift, ice walls collapse, and storms sweep across the terrain without mercy. Each discovery is both miraculous and precarious, fragile traces preserved through the convergence of circumstance and endurance. Explorers must navigate these spaces carefully, understanding that even centuries-old relics can vanish in moments, reclaimed by ice and snow. This impermanence heightens the significance of each discovery, emphasizing the delicate balance between persistence and vulnerability in the polar world. Hidden passages beneath glaciers reveal both danger and insight. Narrow ice tunnels, carved over millennia, conceal relics of forgotten expeditions. The ice preserves not just material objects, but traces of human presence. Footprints hardened in snow, tools partially buried, and journals whose contents hint at ambition interrupted. Each encounter offers a glimpse into the past, a lesson in resilience, and a reminder that every act of exploration leaves a mark, however ephemeral. Amid these hidden depths, beauty intertwines with danger. Light refracting through ice tunnels creates spectral patterns. Shadows stretch and distort across walls. Frozen bubbles glitter like a suspended constellation. These ephemeral displays serve as reminders that the polar frontier, while unforgiving, is also capable of astonishing artistry. The ice rewards observation and awareness, transforming survival into a sensory, almost spiritual, experience. It challenges, humbles, and inspires simultaneously, offering insight into both the environment and the human spirit. Every discovery beneath the ice becomes part of a larger narrative, a continuum linking past and present. Sledges, journals, and personal items, when observed in concert, reveal stories of ingenuity, resilience, and ambition. They teach caution and resourcefulness, celebrate endurance, and underscore the intimate connection between human effort and the frozen world. The polar frontier, in preserving these secrets, becomes a cathedral of memory, where every artifact contributes to an ongoing dialogue between life, history, and the eternal landscape of ice.